It was the summer of 1983, and the air was alive with the spirit of adventure. A group of 7 children, excited and full of energy, arrived at a summer camp nestled deep in the woods of Northern California. The camp, surrounded by towering trees and a serene lake, seemed like the perfect getaway from the hustle and bustle of city life. With the isolation of the camp, it was an ideal place for kids to connect with nature, make new friends, and participate in outdoor activities. 6 boys and 1 girl, all between the ages of 8 and 12, couldn't wait to begin their camp experience. Their days would be filled with hiking, swimming, campfire songs, and the kind of summer freedom only a camp could offer. On the 3rd day of camp, the children set out for a hike, led by their trusted camp counselor, a friendly adult who had been a favorite among the kids. The group ventured down a narrow trail, surrounded by the beauty of the forest. They laughed and joked, enjoying the freedom of the outdoors. The counselor kept a watchful eye on the children as they explored the dense woods, pointing out animals and plants, but keeping the group together. The hike was meant to be a short excursion, a way to enjoy nature while staying close to camp. But when the group returned, something was terribly wrong. The counselor quickly realized that all 7 children were missing. They had not returned to camp. Panic set in. The camp staff immediately raised the alarm, and a frantic search began. The counselor, who had been with the group the entire time, was unable to offer any answers. No one had seen the children leave the trail, and no one had heard any sounds or signs of trouble. Search parties were quickly formed. Camp staff, volunteers, and local authorities combed the surrounding woods, calling out for the children. Helicopters flew overhead, scanning the vast wilderness, but there was no sign of the kids. Days passed, and the search widened, but there was still no trace of the missing children or their belongings. It was as though they had vanished into thin air. The mystery of their disappearance quickly deepened. Had they wandered off the trail and gotten lost in the thick woods? Or had something far darker happened to them? The local community was shaken. The quiet town that had relied on the safety of its surroundings now found itself engulfed in fear and confusion. The case became one of the most baffling disappearances in the area's history. As months turned into years, the mystery slipped into the shadows of cold cases. The families of the missing children, unable to move on, clung to the hope that one day answers would come. But the years passed, and the glimmer of hope for resolution grew dimmer. For years, the disappearance of the 7 children remained an unsolved mystery that weighed heavily on their families. Every day felt like an endless cycle of unanswered questions and heartache. The authorities pursued several leads, hoping for a break in the case, but nothing ever materialized. At first, some believed the children might have run away, though that theory never made sense. The camp was situated in a remote location, surrounded by dense forest and rough terrain, making it nearly impossible for a child to wander off unnoticed. The idea that they had simply gotten lost in the woods seemed unlikely, but no other explanation seemed plausible. Others began to wonder if foul play had been involved. Perhaps someone had taken the children, but there was no sign of forced entry into the camp, no ransom note, and no evidence to suggest that another person had been involved in their disappearance. Investigators checked for any signs of violence or struggle, but there were none. The camp counselor, who had been in charge of the children, was thoroughly questioned, but her story was consistent, and there was nothing to suggest she had been involved. The more the authorities dug, the less they found. As the years turned into decades, the families of the missing children refused to give up. They continued to search for answers, holding on to the hope that one day they would be able to bring their children home. Parents stayed in contact with the authorities, pushing for new leads or fresh perspectives. Every year, they marked the anniversary of their children's disappearance, still holding on to the faint hope that someone, somewhere, might know something. But as time passed, the case became more of a distant memory for the world at large, filed away as just another cold case. For the families, though, the pain never subsided. They couldn't move forward, because every unanswered question kept them trapped in the past. Had the children wandered off into the woods, never to be found? Or had something far more tragic happened to them? These questions haunted their every waking moment. The case seemed destined to remain unsolved, a dark chapter in their lives that had no resolution. The hope that they might one day find the truth was slowly fading, but the memory of their missing children was something they could never let go of. Fast forward to 2024, and the region of Northern California, once a serene and quiet area known for its towering trees and remote landscapes, was engulfed by a catastrophic wildfire. The blaze, fueled by strong winds and dry conditions, scorched thousands of acres of forest and left a trail of destruction in its wake. As the fire ravaged the land, it burned through areas that had remained untouched for years, including the location where the summer camp had once stood. The fire, though devastating, had inadvertently uncovered secrets long buried beneath the earth, secrets that would finally reveal the answers to a decades-old mystery. In the aftermath of the fire, local authorities began surveying the damage, assessing the charred remnants of the once beautiful forest. As the fire's devastation spread across the land, something caught the attention of the emergency responders and investigators. Amid the destruction, a patch of disturbed earth stood out, oddly out of place among the scorched landscape. The ground had been exposed, and it appeared that something had been hidden there for years, buried beneath layers of dirt and time. Curious, the authorities dug deeper, expecting to find evidence of natural causes or damage from the fire. But what they uncovered was far more chilling. As they carefully unearthed the soil, they were shocked to discover human remains buried beneath the surface. The remains were not just any set of remains, they belonged to the 7 missing children who had vanished from the summer camp 41 years earlier. Forensic teams were brought in immediately, and as they worked to piece together the details, it became clear that this was the discovery they had all hoped for but feared at the same time. The remains were carefully examined, and DNA analysis confirmed their identities. The children, once full of life and excitement, had been buried in this forgotten patch of land for decades. The truth that had been buried alongside them had remained hidden for all those years, until the wildfire inadvertently unearthed it. The camp, once the site of happy memories, now became a place of sorrow and revelation. The earth itself had revealed the mystery that had haunted so many, the unanswered questions that had plagued the families and the community for over 4 decades. For the families of the missing children, the discovery was both a relief and a heartbreak. After so many years of uncertainty and pain, they finally had answers. But the truth was devastating. The children, once thought to have been lost forever, had not wandered off or become lost in the woods. They had been hidden, buried, and left to remain forgotten for far too long. The wildfire had exposed the final chapter in a story that had remained unresolved for generations, and now the families could begin to mourn properly, knowing that the mystery had been solved. But the loss was no less painful. The discovery of the remains sent shockwaves through the investigation, reopening a case that had been shrouded in mystery for decades. The revelation was as shocking as it was heartbreaking. 7 children who had disappeared without a trace now had their answers, but the truth was far more unsettling than anyone had ever imagined. The authorities immediately launched a renewed investigation, their minds racing with the gravity of the discovery and what it could mean. Forensic teams quickly went to work, analyzing the remains and the surrounding area. What they uncovered painted a far darker picture than anyone had hoped for. The children's bodies were found just off the hiking trail where they had been walking on that fateful day. This discovery was key. Had the children simply wandered off the path and gotten lost, or had something more deliberate happened? As investigators dug deeper, they realized that the children hadn't wandered off at all. The bodies had been deliberately hidden and buried, suggesting that someone had intentionally removed them from the trail and concealed their existence. The most chilling part of the discovery came as forensic experts examined the cause of death. It was determined that the children had not died from natural causes, nor had they fallen victim to an accident. They had been murdered. This revelation sent a wave of horror through the investigation. The lives of 7 innocent children had been taken in cold blood, and the person responsible had gone to great lengths to hide the crime. The manner of their deaths was brutal, and the realization that their disappearance had been a calculated act of violence left everyone reeling. As the investigation continued, the authorities began to piece together the details of what had happened. It was uncovered that the camp counselor, who had been responsible for the children that day, had been involved in a cover-up. She had hidden the bodies of the children to protect someone, possibly herself or someone else at the camp. She had lied to the authorities, given false statements, and kept the horrific truth from coming to light. It became increasingly clear that the children had met a tragic and violent end, and their deaths were not an accident. The authorities' search for the truth intensified as they questioned everyone involved with the camp that summer. It became evident that the counselor had played a central role in the cover-up, but who had orchestrated the children's deaths? Was it someone at the camp, or was there another dark figure hiding in the shadows? The investigation was only just beginning. and with every new piece of evidence, the mystery grew even more complex. But one thing was certain: someone had intentionally taken the lives of these 7 children, and the truth of that day was now beginning to emerge. The final pieces of the puzzle slowly came together as the investigation delved deeper into the dark secrets surrounding the camp and the disappearance of the 7 children. Through a combination of forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and years of meticulous investigation, it became clear that the camp was far from the innocent getaway it had once appeared to be. In fact, the camp had been run by a network of individuals with dangerous and illegal connections, operating in secrecy for years. It was revealed that the camp was involved in a series of underground activities that had gone unnoticed by the authorities for a long time. The camp counselor, initially considered a victim herself, was eventually revealed to have been an integral part of the larger conspiracy. She had been coerced, manipulated, and perhaps even threatened into helping cover up the deaths of the children. What seemed to be a simple case of mismanagement or tragic accident at first, now unraveled into a far more sinister operation. The counselor, realizing the enormity of the situation, had been forced to conceal the truth and bury the evidence literally and figuratively, so that the dark network behind the camp could remain protected. For years, the conspiracy had stayed hidden from view, a well-kept secret in plain sight. Through the dogged work of investigators, the true identity of the person responsible for the children's deaths was uncovered. The shocking revelation pointed to a high-ranking member of the camp's administration, a person whose ties to criminal activity ran deeper than anyone could have imagined. This individual had orchestrated the children's deaths with the help of the counselor and other complicit members of the camp staff, and buried the bodies in an effort to erase all traces of the crime. As the authorities moved in, the camp was shut down, its doors closed for good. The people behind the conspiracy were arrested and eventually convicted, their crimes coming to light after decades of secrecy. For the families of the missing children, it was a bittersweet victory. They had finally received the closure they had so desperately sought, but the pain of losing their children in such a brutal and preventable way lingered. The memories of their beloved sons and daughters were forever tainted by the tragedy of their untimely deaths. Though the truth had come to light and justice had been served, the families still had to come to terms with the devastating loss. They could finally begin the long process of healing, knowing that the mystery had been solved. Yet, even as the case closed, a haunting question remained in the minds of many. How many other stories like this were hidden, buried under layers of time, just waiting to be uncovered by the forces of fate or the relentless pursuit of truth?